Okay, ladies and gents, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to have a look at a radio control model that we're going to build called Mr. Vintage. If I swing the camera around now, you can see the picture on the box. As you can see, it has old-fashioned styling with the open fuselage. The tail end, the rudder, is got sort of Sopwith Pup similarities. But if you have a look at the wing, as you can see there, it's going to be a semi sort of aerobatic model coming to the front end with more sort of modern looks, if you like, with the box section fuselage, wire wheels there to complete the vintage look. So that's what we're going to be up to. So before we actually start the build, I'd like to show you some of the tools that we're going to be using for the build. First of all, I'll take you through some of the glues that I'll be using. On the left hand side there, you can see the Zap epoxy. That's a 5 minutes variant glue. It's a two-part epoxy where you mix the two halves together. This also comes in like 30-minute version, but as it happens, this is the 5 minutes, which I prefer. Next to that is the aliphatic resin. This is one of my favourite all-time glues. Great for gluing your wooden parts together, your struts, your stringers, your wing ribs, etc. It's also good if you have to laminate parts together, because when you come to sand them down, the glue actually sands really nicely. Unlike the glues to the right hand side of that, which are your CA glues. There's a medium glue and a very thin one there. But horses for courses, they do have the places, the CA glues, because they're a more or less instant bond. And you know, you can really crack on with your build when using this type of glue, even though they can be quite dangerous at times because they like to stick fingers together as well as the woodwork, so just be very careful when using those. Next to that is one of my favourite tools. It's a permagrit sanding block. If I get sort of a bit closer, as you can see, that's the coarse side. If you flip the block over, you have got a smooth side. That's a few years old now. I've never ever cleaned the surface of that. So as you can see, it's just starting to get a bit clogged now. All it takes is some soapy water, a stiff brush under the tap, and it washes off as good as new. Moving on is the old-fashioned sanding block. I'm sure we've all seen these at some stage or other. Perhaps you've used one during your decorating projects. It's got sandpaper on the bottom side on like a foamy base. That's a very, very cheap tool, very effective. I think I bought that from B&M for £1. So obviously, if you don't want to spend out too much for your permagrit, you can go for a normal sanding block, or even make one out of a wooden block and glue a bit of sandpaper to it or staple it to it, etc. Next to that is a razor plane. This is very good for roughing out woodwork. It's probably not necessary for your first build, to be fair, but it's just a very, very handy bit of kit. Again, absolutely dirt cheap. If I move it away, you can see it cost me £6.50. That was about 2 or 3 years ago, so probably gone up a couple of quid, but hey ho, still a cheap tool that's very good. Next to that is the Swan Norton Scalpel Blade. You'll be using one of those a lot during the build, so it pays you to get one. In fact, I've got two because I have a habit of putting one down and can't find it, so I always have two on the go. So you know, they're always handy. Next to that are two clamps, great for clamping parts together while you're waiting for the glue to set. Two different sizes. Again, get these off Amazon or places like that. Cost you about 5 or 6 quid for 10 or 12 of them. You know, dirt cheap, but an absolute invaluable tool to have. You also want a straight edge ruler for cutting, measuring, etc. Another steel ruler that I use there for measuring. And the trusty roll of masking tape. Obviously good for masking off, but also good for holding parts together. for holding your drawing to the drawing board, or you know, to the wall, whatever you want to do. So another handy thing to keep by you. In my workshop I do have some power tools at my disposal. As you can see, a saw there. That's excellent for cutting out formers and sort of fancy shapes, because it has got a really tiny blade, so you can swing your parts around and get some quite complex curves going on with that, no problem at all. Again, this is a tool that for your first build you won't really need. Anything you need to cut out will be done probably with a scalpel or a small fret saw, hand saw, you know, you can use that sort of thing. But that's just a bit of kit that I collected along the way. Moving on, perhaps if I turn the camera the other way, small pedestal drill there. It's only a lightweight job, cheap one from Aldi. Cost me about 60 quid. Again, you don't really need that, but it's a nice little luxury if you can afford one. But again, for your first build, any drilling that you'll do, you can use probably a hand pistol drill, a little bench vise or something like that to hold your components. So no problem at all. Now for this build, I'm going to use a magnetic building board, which I sort of bought a couple of years ago, and I'm just starting to use it in earnest now. All it consists of is some sheet steel, which is galvanized so it doesn't go rusty, and then I've bought loads and loads of these wooden blocks with earth magnets in, so you can see, drop them on, it's got it solid as a rock. All we'll be doing is putting our drawing onto the sheet steel, covering it with a bit of cling film plastic to stop the CA glue going on it, and then we're building it direct, holding our balsa wood, you know, our spars, ribs, etc. with these magnetic blocks. The advantage is obviously you don't use pins, you're not using the pins to hold the wood down, so you won't be creating holes in the wood, which is always nice. And also these are perfectly 90-degree square there, and also a nice 45-degree on the other side, so great for holding all sorts of parts that you come across. Again, I think I've got about 30 of these magnetic blocks. You can't have you know, you can't have too many of these, so I found. So that's what we're going to be using. So that's about it for this video, I think, just to show you the kit and what we're going to use. Please come back, please subscribe and press the bell button, and you'll get further notifications on you know, the sequential videos that we're going to go through to build this model. So thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you for part 2.